In this lesson, we're going to animate the dots to sort of do a wiggling motion and then finally settle. So here we have our dot layer, and I kind of want this to come out when this top U is sort of midway through creating itself. So right about here, I want it to shoot out a dot, and then the first dot will hit here, and then a smaller dot will appear, hit here, and then the small dot will appear and hit here. So to begin with, we'll need 3 dot layers. And of course, we'll need our masks on them. So let's dot is the first one, dot 2 is the small one, and dot 3 is the smallest. So now that we have little masks on these, let's shrink them down again, select all of them, and let's just give them position keyframes. And this will be their final rest. So the first thing I want to do is figure out when I want them to leave this item here. And I want it to be right about here, frame 10. I want it to be when this is aiming at this first dot. So we'll grab this dot here, and let's move it over to this position. Now I also want to move dot 2 and the dot 3 as well, because I want them all to move together. So now that that's done, let's move forward a couple frames. And these dots are going to be moving kind of strange. So let's grab dot, or the first dot, and let's drag this keyframe so it hits its original space. And then let's grab dot 2 and dot 3 and place them over this. So this is going to be a little bit of an intensive keyframing. So let's go to the next few frames. And again, let's key this. And again, we'll want to move dot, or dot 3 on top of dot 2. And then finally have dot 3 go to its location. So let's just take a look at this. So it looks okay now. It hits, and it's kind of rough. So let's go in and let's add a little bit of interesting motion. So right after it hits and before it's finished, I want it to move right a little bit. So let's grab dot 2 and dot 3 and let's move them to the right. And I'm just hitting the arrow keys on my keyboard. And again, we probably want to use Bezier handles. So let's hit F9 to convert these to Bezier. So let's take a look at this. All right, so we need to add in another moving to the left for dot 3 here. And of course, we probably want to grab these 3 layers, hit Alt left bracket to cut them off so they don't appear before they're needed. So now that hits, they circle around, and finally rest. So let's take a look. So as you can see, this dot's now moving out, and then they're kind of wiggling together. And that's just a little piece. Of course, it's going to be difficult to see, but I don't know. I sometimes like to add these little interesting touches into these sort of ornate logo animations, because it's sort of a little Easter egg, or almost a treat for someone who notices this inside of the logo. So the next question is, are we done? So let's check this. And let's actually go out to the main comp and take a look. Now, you'll notice that these dots here are on the bottom as well of this if we just disable this mask for a second. However, they're invisible, or they're not seen in the main comp, so I'm not going to worry about them. So all we need to do now is convert, or actually rotate this into position. Because right now we have the left tendril growing, which is just fine. So let's close this. But we need a right tendril as well. Now, of course, I don't want to go through and do another 30 minutes of work on this if I can simply duplicate it and rotate it into place. So let's take our left tendril grow here, Control D, and now let's move it into place to be on top of this right tendril. So I'm going to hit S to begin with, and we need to not constrain it. And then let's do a negative 100% here. And that will flip it horizontally. So now we can left click and drag this sort of into place. And to place this a little bit easier, let's use the pan behind tool to grab the anchor point. And let's place it on the last dot here. And now all we need to do is line up the dots and then rotate it. So let's move this left tendril grow, which we can now call right tendril grow. And let's move it so these dots are overlapping each other. Okay, that's getting pretty close. And now we just need to rotate this into place. So we can just sort of rough it in or get it correct the very first time. I didn't think it was going to fit that nicely, but if you're having trouble fitting yours, you can always come in and put in decimal places to match it, and of course hide it and show it. Looks like we'll need to move it left a pixel or two. Okay, that was actually much easier than I expected it to be. So remember that if you have these kind of repetitive elements, try not to do the exact same work twice, because obviously we can just use the exact same composition to grow both of these tendrils because they are identical. So in the next lesson, we'll begin timing out all of these growing layers, because as you can see, at the current time, they're all just growing at the exact same pace and the exact same time, which obviously will not work in the main logo. So let's take a look again at our main composition and then see how we can time out our growing elements to create an appealing animation.